Jake Morrison floated in the white room, his body connected to dozens of wires and tubes. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines that kept him alive. 3 years had passed since the day that changed everything. 3 years since the aliens had found him alone on the mining planet. He looked down at his left arm. It was not the same arm he was born with. This one was made of metal and synthetic flesh. It moved when he wanted it to move, but it felt different. Cold, strong, much stronger than his old arm had ever been. The scars on his chest were mostly healed now, but he could still feel where the alien claws had torn through his ribs. The doctors had replaced 3 of them with titanium. His left lung was artificial too, pumping air through his system with perfect efficiency. Sometimes he wondered if he was still human or if he had become something else entirely. Jake closed his eyes and remembered that day on Kepler 442b. He had been part of a geological survey team, looking for rare minerals in the abandoned mines. The planet was supposed to be empty, dead, safe. They had been wrong about all 3 things. The Kithara had come in their sleek hunting ships, tracking human scent across the rocky wasteland. They were 8 feet tall with natural armor covering, their bodies like living tanks. Their claws could cut through steel, and their strength was legendary across 17 star systems. They hunted the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy for sport. Humans were supposed to be easy prey. Jake had been separated from his team when the mine shaft collapsed. He was alone with basic equipment and a standard plasma rifle when the 6 Kithara found him. They had laughed at him through their translators, calling him soft meat and weak flesh. They wanted to play with their food before killing it. The first one died when Jake put a plasma bolt through its eye. The second one lost its head to an improvised explosive he made from mining charges. The third and fourth died together when Jake collapsed the tunnel on them. The 5th one he killed with his bare hands after his rifle ran out of power. But the 6th one, their leader, had been smart. Vex Thaler had waited while Jake fought the others, studying his tactics and learning his weaknesses. When Jake was exhausted and bleeding, the alien leader had struck. The fight had been brutal and quick. Jake had managed to scar the creature's face and damage its left eye. Before those terrible claws had torn him apart, instead of killing him, Vex Thaler had done something worse. He had taken Jake's left arm as a trophy and left him to die slowly. A message to the rest of humanity about what happened to those who fought back against the Kithara. Jake had been found 2 days later by a rescue team, barely alive and delirious from blood loss. The doctors had saved his life. But the person who woke up in the medical bay was not the same man who had gone down into those mines. The door to the medical bay opened with a soft hiss. Commander Lisa Grant walked in, her face serious and tired. She had been Jake's commanding officer before the incident, and she had visited him every week during his recovery. "Jake," she said, sitting down in the chair beside his bed. "We need to talk." Jake turned his head to look at her. His right eye was still human, but his left eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant that could see in multiple spectrums. Lisa's body heat showed up as a warm glow against the cool background of the medical bay. "They're back," Lisa continued. "The Kithara? They've entered human space again?" Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How many ships?" "Just one. A small hunting vessel." "But Jake, they're not here for a random hunt. They're asking for you specifically." Jake sat up in the bed, his enhanced muscles moving with smooth precision. The cybernetic interfaces in his spine connected his brain directly to his artificial limbs, making them respond faster than natural flesh ever could. "Vex Thaler? That's what our translation computers think the name is. The alien that left you on Kepler 442b, he's challenging you to formal combat under galactic law." Jake swung, his legs over the side of the bed. His feet touched the cold floor, and he felt the weight of his new body. The doctors had done more than just replace his damaged parts. They had enhanced him, made him stronger, faster, more durable than any baseline human. "What does the Defense Force want me to do?" Lisa stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. The stars were bright and cold, scattered across the darkness like diamonds. Officially, we want you to refuse. You've been through enough. You've done your duty to humanity? And unofficially? Lisa turned back to him, her expression grim. Unofficially, the Cathara have been terrorizing our outer colonies for 6 months. They've killed over 200 civilians and taken dozens more as hunting trophies. Every time we send ships to stop them, they disappear into deep space. Jake nodded slowly. He had heard the reports during his recovery. The Cathara had become bolder since their encounter with him, spreading stories about the human who had killed 4 of their pack before falling. Some species in the galaxy saw it as proof that humans were dangerous. Others saw it as proof that humans could be beaten. If I fight him and lose, it sends a message that humans are still prey, Jake said. And if you fight him and win? Jake flexed his cybernetic hand, watching the synthetic muscles contract under the artificial skin. Then maybe they'll think twice before hunting us again. Dr. Peter Cole entered the medical bay, carrying a datapad filled with test results. He was a thin man with gray hair and worried eyes. He had been the one to design most of Jake's cybernetic systems. Jake, you can't be serious about this, Dr. Cole said. Your body is still adapting to the new systems. The neural load alone could cause permanent damage. How permanent? The kind where you spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair, assuming you survive the fight at all? Jake stood up and walked to the mirror on the far wall. The face that looked back at him was familiar but different. Scars ran along his jawline where the alien claws had marked him. His left eye glowed softly blue in the dim light. His body was broader now, packed with enhanced muscle and synthetic bone. He looked like what he had become, a weapon designed for war. Doctor, what are the chances that my enhancements will hold up in combat? Dr. Cole sighed and consulted his datapad. Honestly, I don't know. We've never tested these systems in real combat conditions. The cybernetic arm can punch through steel plates, and your artificial lung can process toxins that would kill a normal human. Your enhanced reflexes operate on millisecond timing. But you're still partially human, Jake. The organic parts of you can still be damaged, still be killed. Jake turned away from the mirror and looked at both of them. Lisa, with her military bearing and worried expression, Dr. Cole with his scientific concerns and ethical doubts. Both of them cared about him, but neither of them understood what he had become. Send a message to the Cathara, Jake said. Tell them Jake Morrison accepts their challenge. Lisa stepped forward. Jake, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You already showed them what humans are capable of. No, Jake replied, his voice calm and steady. I showed them that humans can die fighting. Now I need to show them that humans can win. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Vex Thaler was waiting for him, the alien who had taken his arm and left him for dead. The creature who thought humans were weak prey to be hunted for sport. Jake smiled. And for the first time in 3 years it was not a sad smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found his prey. The neutral station hung in space like a giant metal wheel, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Jake Morrison sat in the passenger seat of the courier ship Falcon as it approached the docking bay. Captain Ron Hayes was at the controls, his weathered hand steady on the flight stick despite the tension in the air. You sure about this, Jake? Ron asked for the 10th time since they had left Earth. It's not too late to turn around. Jake watched the station grow larger through the viewport. Ships from dozens of different species were docked at various ports. He could see the sleek vessels of the Altarians, the bulky cargo haulers of the Centauri traders, and the angular warships of the Cathara hunting guild. I'm sure, Jake said, his cybernetic eye automatically analyzing the weapon systems on the alien ships. His enhanced brain processed the data faster than conscious thought. Cataloging threats and tactical advantages, the Falcon settled into its assigned docking bay with a soft thud. Jake stood up and checked his equipment one final time. He wore simple civilian clothes, but the sensors built into his cybernetic systems were more advanced than most military gear. His artificial eye could see in multiple spectrums, and his Enhanced hearing could pick up conversations through the station's metal walls. "Remember," Ron said as they prepared to leave the ship, "this is neutral territory. No weapons, no violence. Just talking." Jake nodded, but his enhanced reflexes were already mapping the station's layout. Emergency exits, security checkpoints, areas where he could take cover if things went wrong. 3 years of recovery had not made him paranoid. They had made him prepared. The station's main corridor was crowded with beings from across the galaxy. Jake recognized most of the species from his military briefings, but seeing them in person was different. The Altarians were tall and graceful, moving like dancers through the crowds. The Centauri traders were short and stocky, their forearms constantly gesturing as they haggled over prices. And then there were the Kythara. Jake saw them before they saw him. 3 of them stood near the central meeting chamber, their 8-foot frames towering over the other species. Their natural armor plates gleamed under the artificial lights, and their claws were partially extended in a display of casual threat. The largest of the 3 turned as Jake approached. Even without his enhanced senses, Jake would have recognized that scarred face and the missing left eye. Vexthaler looked exactly as he had 3 years ago, except for the deep claw marks across his chest that spoke of challenges within his own pack. "The soft skin returns," Vexthaler said, his translator converting the alien words into standard English. The voice was deep and rumbling like rocks grinding together. "I can smell your fear scent from here." Jake stopped 10 feet away, his cybernetic eye focusing on the alien's posture. Vexthaler was favoring his right leg slightly, and there was tension in his shoulder muscles that suggested old injuries. The scars on his chest were not just decorative. They were proof that other Kythara had challenged his leadership after the failed hunt on Clover 4-2B. "You're right," Jake said calmly. "I'm not the same person you left bleeding in those mines." The other aliens in the corridor had stopped their conversations and were watching the exchange. News of the challenge had spread throughout the station, and everyone wanted to see the human who had killed 4 Kythara hunters. Vexthaler stepped closer, his claws extending fully. "You are still weak flesh over fragile bones. Your species cries when injured and begs for mercy when dying. I have hunted your kind across 7 worlds. And yet here you are, asking for me specifically," Jake replied. "If humans are such easy prey, why do you need to prove it twice?" The alien's remaining eye narrowed. Around them, the crowd of observers grew larger. Jake could see representatives from the Galactic Council, news crews from major networks, and diplomats from a dozen different species. This was not just a personal challenge anymore. It was a statement about humanity's place in the galaxy. "You killed my pack brothers," Vexthaler growled. "Under the laws of the hunt, I have the right to reclaim the honor you stole." Jake felt his enhanced heart rate increase slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Under those same laws, I have the right to choose the terms of combat. Name them. Single combat, no weapons except what we can make or find. No time limit, fight to submission or death." Vexthaler's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Acceptable. Name." "The world." Jake had spent weeks considering this moment. The choice of battlefield would be crucial. The Kythara were adapted to high-gravity worlds with extreme temperatures. Most human colonies were too similar to their home environment. But there was one world that would give him every possible advantage. "Earth," Jake said. The alien's confidence wavered for just a moment. "Your homeworld?" "That is unusual. Most prey species prefer neutral ground." "Most prey species don't get to choose," Jake replied. "But I'm not prey anymore." A Galactic Council representative stepped forward. She was Altarian, tall and elegant with silver skin and large black eyes. "The challenge is witnessed and recorded," she announced in a voice that carried through the station's speakers. "Combat will take place on the human homeworld of Earth under the traditional laws of the hunt." The crowd began to disperse, but Jake could feel the weight of their stares. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with fear. A few, mostly from species that had been hunted by the Kythara, looked at him with something like hope. Vex Thaler leaned closer, his massive frame casting a shadow over Jake. I have studied your species since our last encounter. You are pack. Hunters who rely on tools and technology. Strip away your machines, and you are nothing but soft meat. Jake looked up at the alien who had nearly killed him, who had taken his arm and left him to die. His cybernetic eyes zoomed in on the creature's face, recording every detail for analysis later. You're about to find out what humans become when you take everything away from us. The Cathara leader turned and walked away, his two packmates following behind. Jake watched them go, his enhanced hearing picking up their conversation in their native language. His translator implant worked on the alien words, providing a rough understanding of their meaning. They were discussing tactics. Desert environments versus Arctic conditions, the advantages of Earth's lower gravity versus the problems of its oxygen-rich atmosphere. They were taking this challenge seriously, which meant they had learned from their previous encounter. Good. Jake wanted them to be prepared. Ron Hayes appeared at his elbow, having watched the entire exchange from a distance. Well, that was terrifying, he said. Please tell me you have a plan. Jake turned away from the meeting chamber and headed back toward their ship. I have 3 weeks to prepare. That's enough time? Enough time for what? To remember what it means to be human. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake's enhanced senses picked up dozens of conversations about the upcoming fight. Some species were placing bets on the outcome. Others were analyzing the tactical implications. A few were already planning how to exploit the situation regardless of who won. But Jake wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about Earth, about the forests and mountains where his ancestors had learned to hunt, about the cold that would slow the Kithra's movements and the terrain that would favor smaller, more adaptable prey. Vex Thaler had made one crucial mistake. He still thought of Jake as the same human he had fought 3 years ago, a survey team member with basic training and standard equipment. He didn't understand that Jake Morrison had died in those mines on Kepler-442b. What had crawled out of the wreckage was something new. Something that had spent 3 years learning to be the perfect predator. Something that was about to teach the galaxy what happened when you hunted humans on their own world. The game was about to begin. And for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morrison was looking forward to the hunt. The Alaskan wilderness stretched out in every direction, white and endless under the gray winter sky. Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the frozen lake, his breath forming small clouds in the -20-degree air. His enhanced body adapted to the cold quickly, but he could feel the bite of the wind through his thermal clothing. 2 weeks had passed since he arrived at the remote location. 2 weeks of acclimatizing to Earth's gravity after years in space stations and low-gravity environments. His cybernetic systems had needed constant adjustment as his body remembered what it meant to be truly human again. The drop zone was 50 miles from the nearest human settlement, deep in the heart of the Alaskan National Forest. Ash and pine. Trees covered the rolling hills, their branches heavy with snow. Frozen streams cut through the landscape like silver ribbons, and the only sounds were the whisper of wind and the crack of ice settling. Jake had chosen this place carefully. The Cathara were built for hot, high-gravity worlds with thin atmospheres. Earth's cold would slow their movements and drain their energy. The deep snow would make their heavy bodies clumsy, while Jake's enhanced leg muscles could move him quickly. Across the terrain, his cybernetic eye scanned the horizon, automatically cataloging potential shelter sites and escape routes. The neural interface in his spine processed the data faster than conscious thought, building a 3-dimensional map of the area in his enhanced memory. A sonic boom echoed across the valley as Vex Thaler's drop pod entered the atmosphere. Jake tracked the descent with his artificial eye, watching the alien craft streak across the sky like a falling star. The pod landed 5 kilometers to the north, sending up a cloud of snow and steam. Jake's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of the pod's door opening. Even at this distance, he could hear the alien's heavy footsteps as Vex Thaler began his hunt. The Kithara would be disoriented by the cold and the oxygen-rich atmosphere. But he was still a deadly predator with centuries of hunting experience. The command center was hidden in a bunker 20 miles away, staffed by Colonel Amy Foster and a team of military observers. Jake's neural implant connected him to their communication network, allowing them to monitor his vital signs and tactical situation. "Jake, we're reading your position," Amy's voice came through his implant. "The alien is moving south toward your location. Estimated time to contact is 4 hours." "Copy that," Jake replied without speaking, his thoughts transmitted directly through the neural link. "Any changes in his behavior pattern?" "Negative. He's moving in a standard hunting spiral, checking for tracks and scent trails." "But Jake?" "His body temperature is dropping faster than our models predicted. The cold is affecting him more than we thought." Jake smiled grimly. He had hoped for that. The Kithara's natural armor was designed to protect against claws and energy weapons, not sub-zero temperatures. Every minute Vex Thaler spent in the cold would make him slower and less effective. Jake began moving east, staying downwind of the alien's position. His enhanced muscles carried him easily through the deep snow, while his cybernetic systems regulated his body temperature and oxygen intake. The artificial lung in his chest processed the thin air with perfect efficiency, giving him unlimited endurance. The first day passed in careful positioning. Jake used his knowledge of the terrain to stay ahead of the alien hunter while gathering intelligence on his opponent's condition. His enhanced senses could detect Vex Thaler's heat signature from over a mile away, and his cybernetic eye could zoom in to observe the alien's movements in detail. The Kithara was struggling. His heavy body broke through the snow surface with each step, leaving deep tracks that Jake could follow easily. Ice was forming on his natural armor, and his movements were becoming sluggish as his body temperature dropped, but he was still dangerous. Jake had seen those claws cut through steel, and one mistake would be fatal regardless of the environmental conditions. As night fell, Jake made his first move. He approached to within 200 meters of the alien's position, moving silently through the snow-covered trees. His thermal vision showed Vex Thaler huddled against a large boulder, trying to conserve body heat. Jake picked up a rock and threw it with his cybernetic arm. The stone sailed through the air and struck a tree 30 meters to the alien's right. Vex Thaler's head snapped toward the sound, his remaining eye searching the darkness. Jake threw another rock, this time to the left, then another behind the alien's position. Within minutes, he had Vex Thaler spinning in circles, trying to locate an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. "Coward," Vex Thaler's voice echoed through the forest, amplified by his suit's speakers. "Face me as a warrior, not a scavenger hiding in the shadows." Jake smiled but didn't respond. This was psychological warfare designed to frustrate the alien and make him careless. The Kithara were proud hunters who valued direct confrontation. Being stalked by unseen prey would be deeply humiliating. Jake spent the night moving around the alien's position, throwing rocks and breaking branches to create phantom sounds. He never stayed in one place long enough to be tracked, and his enhanced body needed no rest or sleep. By dawn, Vex Thaler was exhausted and angry. Ice crystals covered his armor, and his movements had become noticeably slower. Jake could see the alien's breath in the cold air, each exhalation a visible sign of his weakening condition. The second day brought new challenges. Vex Thaler had learned from the previous night's harassment and was now moving more cautiously. He stayed in areas with good visibility and kept his back to solid cover whenever possible. Jake adapted his tactics accordingly. He began using the terrain itself as a weapon, triggering small avalanches that forced the alien to change direction. His cybernetic arm could throw stones with enough force to break tree branches, creating obstacles that further slowed the Kitharas. Progress. The psychological pressure was having its effect. Jake could see the alien's frustration growing with each passing hour. Vex Thaler was a hunter, not prey, and being stalked by an unseen enemy was destroying his confidence. "I know you can hear me, human," Vex Thaler shouted into the wind. "Your species are pack hunters. You need your technology and your numbers to be dangerous. Alone, you are nothing." Jake's enhanced hearing picked up the uncertainty in the alien's voice. The translator was struggling with emotional nuances, but Jake could detect the fear underneath the bluster. Vex Thaler was beginning to realize that he was no longer the hunter in this equation. As the second night approached, Jake made his decision. The alien was weakened, frustrated, and operating in an environment that gave Jake every advantage. It was time to end the psychological warfare and begin the real fight. He positioned himself on a ridge, overlooking the alien's camp. His cybernetic eyes zoomed in on Vex Thaler's position, analyzing the creature's posture and movements. The alien was favoring his right leg more heavily now, and ice had formed around the joints in his armor. Jake's enhanced muscles coiled like springs as he prepared for the final confrontation. 3 years of recovery, modification, and training had led to this moment. The alien who had taken his arm and left him to die was about to learn what humans became when they were pushed beyond their limits. The hunt was almost over. Soon, Vex Thaler would discover that the prey he had dismissed as weak, flesh over fragile bones had evolved into something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Jake Morrison was no longer the survey team member who had stumbled into those mines 3 years ago. He was a human Deathworlder, and he was about to show the galaxy what that truly meant. The attack came at 3 in the morning when the forest was darkest and coldest. Jake Morrison crouched behind a snow-covered log, his enhanced senses tracking every movement in the area below. Vex Thaler had finally stopped running and decided to make his stand in a small clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. The alien was tired. 2 days of cold and psychological warfare had taken their toll on his massive frame. Ice crystals covered his natural armor, and his movements were slow and stiff. But Jake knew better than to underestimate a wounded predator. The Kithara were most dangerous when cornered. Jake's cybernetic eyes zoomed in on his target. Vex Thaler stood 8 feet tall, even with his shoulders hunched against the cold. His claws were fully extended, each one sharp enough to cut through steel. The scars on his face from their previous encounter were clearly visible in the thermal imaging, a permanent reminder of their first fight. "I know you are watching, human," Vex Thaler called out into the darkness. His translator struggled with the alien words, creating a distorted echo that bounced off the trees. "Come down and face me, end this game of hiding and running." Jake remained silent. His enhanced hearing picked up the alien's labored breathing and the slight tremor in his voice. Fear, the great Kithara hunter was afraid, and that fear would make him either more dangerous or more careless. Jake moved silently through the trees, his enhanced muscles carrying him over the snow without leaving tracks. His cybernetic systems had adapted perfectly to the cold environment, while Vex Thaler's tropical biology was fighting a losing battle against the sub-zero temperatures. The alien's thermal signature showed areas where his body heat was dropping dangerously low. His extremities were nearly the same temperature as the surrounding air, and his core temperature had fallen several degrees below normal. In another few hours, hypothermia would do Jake's work for him, but Jake had not come here to watch his enemy freeze to death. He had come for justice, for closure, for proof that humans were not the weak prey species the galaxy believed them to be. Jake dropped from the trees like a falling shadow. He landed 10 feet behind Vex Thaler, his boots making no sound in the soft snow. The alien spun around with reflexes dulled by cold but still fast enough to be deadly. Those massive claws whistled through the air where Jake's head had been a split second before. Jake rolled to the side and came up in a combat crouch, his cybernetic arm already moving in a counterstrike. His artificial fist connected with the alien's armored ribs, delivering a blow that would have shattered human bones. Vex Thaler staggered but did not fall. "So the soft skin finally shows himself," the alien snarled, ice falling from his jaws as he spoke. "You have become faster, but you are still weak flesh over breakable bones." Jake circled his opponent, analyzing weak points and attack angles. The cold had made the alien's armor brittle, and the joints between plates were vulnerable. His enhanced eye marked target zones while his neural implants calculated strike patterns. "You talk too much," Jake said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "It's a weakness." Vex Thaler lunged forward with surprising speed, his claws extended in a killing strike. Jake's enhanced reflexes kicked in, time seeming to slow as his cybernetic systems processed the attack. He twisted away from the claws and grabbed the alien's wrist with his artificial hand. The servos in his cybernetic arm whined as they applied pressure. Vex Thaler's eyes widened as he felt the crushing force that threatened to break his bones. This was not the same human he had fought 3 years ago. The alien brought his free hand around in a backhanded blow that caught Jake across the chest. The impact sent him flying into a tree trunk, snow cascading down from the disturbed branches. Jake's enhanced ribs absorbed most of the force, but he still felt the crushing power behind the strike. He rolled away as Vex Thaler's foot stomped down where his head had been, leaving a deep crater in the frozen ground. The alien was strong enough to cave in a human skull with a single kick, enhanced bones or not. Jake came up running, using the trees as cover while he planned his next attack. His thermal vision showed that the exertion was costing Vex Thaler precious body heat. Every movement drained energy the alien could not afford to lose. "You cannot run forever," Vex Thaler shouted, pursuing Jake through the forest. "This world will freeze us both before dawn." Jake smiled as he led the alien on a chase through the deepest snow. His cybernetic systems regulated his body temperature perfectly while Vex Thaler's natural biology was failing in the hostile environment. Each step the alien took sank him deeper into the snow. While Jake's enhanced legs carried him across the surface, the chase lasted 20 minutes before Vex Thaler finally stopped, his massive chest heaving with exhaustion. Ice had formed around his mouth and nostrils, making breathing difficult. His movements were becoming sluggish as hypothermia set in. Jake turned to face his enemy, no longer running. The time for games was over. "You wanted to know what I had become," Jake said, walking slowly toward the alien. "I am what humans become when you take everything away from us. I am adaptation, I am evolution, I am survival." Vex Thaler raised his claws in a defensive posture, but Jake could see the weakness in his stance. The cold had stolen the alien's strength and speed, leaving him vulnerable to attack. Jake feinted left, then struck right. His cybernetic fist punched through a gap in the alien's armor, finding the soft tissue beneath. Vex Thaler roared in pain and rage. Swinging wildly with both hands, Jake ducked under the attack and grabbed the alien's left arm. His enhanced strength bent the limb backward until something snapped with a wet crack. Vex Thaler's roar became a scream of agony as his arm hung useless at his side. "Impossible," the alien gasped, staring at his broken limb. "Your species is weak, fragile. You cannot be stronger than Cathara." "We're not stronger," Jake said, circling his wounded opponent. "We're smarter. We adapt. We learn. We become whatever we need to become to survive." Vex Thaler made one final desperate charge, his remaining good arm extended for a killing blow. Jake waited until the last moment, then stepped aside and grabbed the alien's wrist. He used Vex Thaler's own momentum against him, redirecting the attack and sending the massive creature crashing into a tree. The alien hit the trunk with bone-crushing force and slid to the ground, leaving a red stain on the bark. He tried to stand, but his legs would not support his weight. Blood ran from his mouth, steaming in the cold air. Jake stood over his fallen enemy, his enhanced body barely showing signs of exertion. The fight that should have killed him had instead proven his transformation complete. He was no longer the helpless survey team member who had been left to die in those mines. "You have won," Vex Thaler whispered, his translator crackling with static. "By the laws of the hunt, you may claim your trophy." Jake looked down at the alien who had haunted his nightmares for 3 years, the creature who had taken his arm and left him broken, the predator who had considered humans nothing more than amusing prey. "I don't want your trophy," Jake said. "I want something else." Jake Morrison stood over the fallen Cathara, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Vex Thaler lay broken against the tree trunk, his massive frame no longer the terrifying presence it had been just minutes before. Blood steamed on the snow around the alien hunter, and his remaining eyes stared up at Jake with something that might have been respect. "What do you want, human?" Vex Thaler asked, his translator crackling with damaged electronics. "If not my death, then what?" Jake's cybernetic eye recorded everything as billions of beings across the galaxy watched through the live broadcast. Feeds. News crews from dozens of worlds had been following the hunt, and now they witnessed something unprecedented in Cathara history. A prey species had defeated their greatest hunter in single combat. "I want your word," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. "The Cathara will spread the message across the galaxy. Humans are not prey. We are not weak. We are not victims to be hunted for sport." Vex Thaler's scarred face twisted. With confusion, "You do not understand what you ask. The Cathara have hunted for 10,000 years. We are apex predators. We do not give words to prey animals?" "Then maybe it's time you learned something new," Jake replied. Around the galaxy, the implications of Jake's victory were already being felt. In the command bunker 20 miles away, Colonel Amy Foster watched the tactical displays as reports flooded in from across human space. Cathara hunting packs were withdrawing from human colonies. Other predator species were canceling planned raids on human settlements. The balance of power had shifted in a single night. "Jake," Amy's voice came through his neural implant, "we're getting reports from the Galactic Council. 7 different species are requesting formal meetings to discuss trade agreements. They want to negotiate from a position of equality, not superiority." Jake nodded but kept his attention focused on Vex Thaler. The alien was dying, his body temperature dropping too low to sustain life in the harsh environment. Jake could let him freeze to death and claim a complete victory. But that would make him no better than the creatures he had fought against. Instead, Jake activated his emergency beacon. Within minutes, rescue shuttles would arrive to provide medical aid to both combatants. The hunt was over, but Jake would not let it end in unnecessary death. "Why?" Vex Thaler asked, seeing Jake call for help. "I am your enemy. I took your limb and left you to die. Why save my life?" Jake knelt down beside the wounded alien, his enhanced senses monitoring the creature's vital signs. "Because that's what humans do. We don't kill for sport or pleasure. We kill when we have to protect ourselves and others. But when the fight is over, we save lives." The alien's remaining eyes studied Jake's face, trying to understand this strange concept. In Cathara culture, defeated enemies were either killed or abandoned to die. Mercy was a sign of weakness. "Your species is not what we believed," Vex Thaler admitted, his voice growing weaker. "We thought you were soft creatures from a gentle world. We were wrong." "Earth is not gentle," Jake said, hearing the distant sound of approaching aircraft. "Our world has tried to kill us in every way possible. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, predators, natural disasters. We survived all of it. We adapted to all of it. And every challenge made us stronger." The rescue shuttles landed in the clearing, their engines melting the snow and filling the air with steam. Medical teams rushed out with equipment designed to treat both human and alien physiology. Jake stood back and let them work, watching as they stabilized Vex Thaler's condition. Dr. Peter Cole emerged from one of the shuttles, carrying a portable medical scanner. He ran the device over Jake's body, checking for injuries and system malfunctions. "How are you feeling?" the doctor asked, studying the readouts. "Like I just remembered what it means to be human," Jake replied. The news crews arrived next, their cameras and recording equipment capturing every detail of the aftermath. Jake found himself surrounded by reporters from dozens of worlds, all asking questions about his victory and what it meant for human-alien relations. "Mr. Morrison," called a reporter from the Centauri News Network, "do you consider this a declaration of war against the Cathara?" "No," Jake said firmly. "This was a challenge between 2 individuals. Vex Thaler came here seeking personal revenge, and I gave him a fair fight. The Cathara people are not my enemy." "But surely this changes humanity's position in the galaxy," pressed another reporter. Jake looked directly into the camera, knowing that his words would be broadcast to every inhabited world. "It should change how everyone thinks about the nature of strength. Physical power isn't everything. Intelligence, adaptability, and the will to survive matter more than size or natural weapons. In the weeks that followed, Jake's words proved prophetic. The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity as a class of species, eligible for full membership and protection under interstellar law. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years were suddenly approved. Military alliances that had seemed impossible became routine negotiations. The Kithara Hunting Guild issued a formal statement declaring humans to be worthy adversaries rather than prey animals. They would no longer target human colonies for sport hunting, though individual challenges were still permitted under strict protocols. Vex Thaler survived his injuries and was eventually repatriated to his homeworld. Before leaving Earth, he requested a private meeting with Jake. They met in the medical facility where Jake had spent so many months recovering from their first encounter. "I have a gift for you," the alien said, extending a small metal object. It was a claw from his own hand, carved with intricate hunting symbols. "Among my people, this represents respect between equals." Jake accepted the gift, feeling the weight of its significance. "What will you do now?" "Return to my world and teach young hunters about the dangers of underestimating prey," Vex Thaler replied. "Perhaps some of them will learn wisdom instead of arrogance." 3 months later, Jake Morrison received new orders from the Terran Defense Force. He was to establish and command the Enhanced Human Training Program, designed to create a new generation of soldiers capable of operating in any environment. Against any enemy, the program's first class consisted of volunteers from across human space, men and women who had been injured in alien attacks and wanted to fight back. Jake trained them not just in combat techniques, but in the philosophy of human survival. Adaptation, intelligence, and the refusal to give up were more important than raw strength. On the anniversary of his fight with Vex Thaler, Jake stood before his graduating class and delivered his final lecture. "You are not super soldiers," he told them. "You are not weapons. You are human beings who have chosen to become more than what you were. Remember that when you face the darkness. Remember that when others call you weak, you are the children of Earth, and Earth breeds no weaklings." The galaxy had learned that humans were not the helpless prey species they had appeared to be. Some creatures were larger, stronger, or more naturally armed, but none of them possessed the human capacity for growth, change, and stubborn refusal. To surrender. Jake Morrison had gone into those mines 3 years ago as a simple survey team member. He had emerged as something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before. He was a human Deathworlder, and he had taught the universe what that truly meant. The Predator had indeed come back for revenge. But the human he found was no longer the same. Jake Morrison had become evolution in action, proof that humanity's greatest strength was not what they were, but what they could become.